Hello and welcome to Hawkeye Nation. This is HawkCast, your Iowa football, basketball, and recruiting podcast brought to you by Hawkeye Beacon and Rivals.com. I am your recruiting analyst and host, Eliot Clough, at Eliot Clough on Twitter, joined by publisher Adam Jacoby to recap last night's 32-20 loss to Michigan State. But before we do that, make sure that you hit that subscribe, drop a like, drop a comment. As always, save space, guys. Let us know what you're thinking down in the comments. Let us know how you're feeling about the program, etc. And of course, as always, hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, so you don't miss an episode. Now, Adam, obviously we have to talk about Cade because the offense had its struggles. But to me, I wrote about the defense post game because when was the last time Iowa didn't force a punt? I can tell you, it's 2013 against Ohio State. So that's pretty telling of how rough the defense was.
Yeah, it was surprising, and it was certainly not what I expected, and what most people would not have expected to come out of that game. One, because like you said, it's been over a decade since Iowa's been, held off of getting a third down stop like that, and forcing a punt. But two, just watching the game, Iowa looked a step slow. Iowa looked almost listless on defense, especially in that first half when it was just long drive after long drive after long drive. And we've seen them bow up after halftime in instances like this often. And it was reasonable to expect that, they're going to make those halftime adjustments, that they're going to, do what, if there's any truth to, or if this is just Higgins speak, but those team decisions of, all right, well, we're just going to execute better. All right, well, this is on us. And usually when we hear things like that, it's after Iowa has put together a much better second half on defense, and that just did not happen on Saturday. And even Higgins, who led the team with 14 tackles, we had some people in our premium thread, the game thread, saying that they had counted at least 5 missed tackles, and that was like early third quarter too. This was not. Let's look back at the end, and yeah, they did miss Sebastian Castro. They did miss Cone Entringer when he went out with that injury, but this was an 11-man failure on defense, and I don't really know how else to put that. Is that your read too?
Yeah. It all starts and ends with Jay Higgins, right?
Yeah.
And he'll tell you that. And I mean, but he took responsibility post game. That's something that's easy to respect about Jay and the defense is they'll never tell you, oh, I think I'm playing well when they're clearly not. You mentioned the missed tackles. That's like underline, bold, italics, all that from this game for the defense. I just saw this from Hawkeye Game Film on Twitter. According to PFF charting, Iowa had 38 missed tackles as a team through 6 games on defense, about 6 per game. Michigan State had missed 68 tackles in 6 games, about 11 per game. Last night, PFF charted Iowa at missing 19 tackles and only 3 for Michigan State. Some crazy
Yeah.
telling numbers.
Yeah, and sometimes, especially with PFF, and we know that the Iowa staff doesn't have a ton of respect for their data gathering, and I get it. I on some level I get that they trust their own numbers over PFF's, but that stat, the broken tackle stat, I would imagine internally in Iowa City, whatever they tracked is very similar to that too, because that really did feel like the story of the game. Iowa was not wrapping up, and Michigan State was playing some of the best defense of their lives. And uh, you know, that's how you earn a win if you're Michigan State. That is how you play under the lights, play up for that homecoming crowd. Michigan State just looked like they had more energy, knew what they were doing. And once Aiden Childs got in a rhythm, he was devastating to the Iowa defense. He was dancing around, buying himself time, throwing to his 2 receivers who both had 100 yards plus receiving. And speaking of the last time Iowa let a team do that, I I cannot remember the last time Iowa allowed two 100-yard receivers from the same team, especially when, there wasn't an 80-yard TD, just thrown into the middle of that. That was a really tough day for the secondary. A very tough day, especially at that CB2 spot, right?
I was just gonna say that too. Yeah, and I mean, okay, you mentioned the 100-yard receivers. I mean, it probably Ohio State, right? Like, I don't know how that
Probably.
shook out, but like these two guys are good, but they're not Jeremiah Smith. They're not Emeka Egbuka. They're not Marvin Harrison Jr. Like that second corner spot really struggled. And then so TJ Hall gets these two penalties. It looked like people on our board and on Twitter for that matter wanted to blame TJ for that one pass up the middle. It looked to me, I mean, you guys have a better view on TV. But it looked to me like it was just a good design and also looked like Cohen got beat. But some folks were saying TJ was just lost on an island somewhere out there. So I don't know on that one. But then he got called for two penalties on one play. And so it was John Nestor time. I keep wanting to say Zach Lutmer. I'm talking about John Nestor, but it's John Nestor. John Nestor time at that second corner spot, and he struggled, man. As a guy
Badly.
that had a lot of hype going into camp, that folks were seeing as hoping to be the next Cooper DeJean, the next Riley Moss in that line of corners was rough. They had that 1 yard touchdown. I think it was in the fourth quarter, but before that they called a touchdown and ended up calling it back on the 1 yard line, and it was John Nestor one-on-one. Oh, getting that guy the ball. It was just trying to expose a young guy all night. And it was confusing as to what, I mean, considering John was struggling, considering TJ wasn't playing well, no Deshaun Lee, like you say you've got three guys. How much do you want to rotate in one game, right? Like I get that. But I asked Kirk about it post game, and then he gave the answer in his pocket. Oh, we've got three guys we like. We're gonna see how that goes and evaluate. We're always evaluating. Okay, well,
Yeah.
it didn't seem like you were evaluating yesterday because Nestor struggled. And that might just be a byproduct of the way the team was playing. I'd have to go back and watch, sure, but it wasn't good. Nowhere was good. Nowhere was good yesterday.
Yeah, to shout out Hawkeye Game Film once again, because I mean his research and his insight is fantastic. But he mentioned that uh, Nestor was really struggling with getting his hips moving around, getting those in place, staying in phase, struggling with his footwork, and some of that is the fact that Nick Marsh is a very athletic receiver, and Foster Jr. is a very athletic receiver. But we had heard that Nestor's athletic. We'd heard that Zach Lutmer's athletic. This is these are tough matchups, but tough players win tough matchups. And hopefully for I keep wanting to confuse those two too. Hopefully for Nestor's sake, this is sort of the same sort of growth curve that Riley Moss was on, because as Pat Vitt mentioned, Moss got targeted pretty often by Purdue. And, Purdue beat Iowa by throwing at Riley Moss when he was a freshman or sophomore. And now Moss is starting for the Broncos. So one bad game, excuse me, one bad game as an underclassman doesn't doom these guys for the rest of their careers by any stretch, but it is a way to lose a game. It is, an L that's going to lose, that's going to last forever. It is a, marking point where you say, all right, this is how you played this game. It's not good enough. This is how you lose Big Ten games. This is how Big Ten receivers beat you. All right, now you know that. And how does this secondary improve from here? Because this is just about one of the most porous secondaries I've seen from Iowa in the Phil Parker era, if not the most porous one. And that is shocking considering the amount of talent that they had coming into the season.
Yeah, all the guys that they had, not even just talent, but like returning starters, right?
Yeah.
You can talk about talent, but Quinn Schulte's a sixth year. Sixth year? He feels like he's been there for 8 years. 6th year, you got 6-year Jamari Harris. You got 5-star Xavier Wampa. Cohen Entringer's good. Like, he's on the come up. Sebastian Castro, a 5th or 6th year guy. And then that second corner spot. It's amazing. It's amazing how much Cooper affected the game, right? And I feel like we're
Yeah.
almost talking about this every week. It's just like the defense misses him so much. And Caden Weegan was really good in the kick return game last night. He didn't return any punts, but that was like the one bright spot. Kirk said post game, he's like, I have to give credit where it's due. This is the one good thing we had going on. And Caden was awesome last night. He had a couple, that weren't great, but he also had a lot of returns. And got Iowa's offense in good position a lot, and they didn't capitalize a lot. So, yeah, I think you made a good point on Nestor, right? Don't write him off. This has happened before. He's got an opportunity to come back. So, just to revert back to that. But now let's go to the offense in talking about how they didn't capitalize. What was the stat you sent me last night? Was Cade 5 of 17 outside of the third quarter?
Yeah. So he was 11 for 23 for 150 yards and that one awful pick that we've been told was a miscommunication, and it really had to be a miscommunication because nobody would throw that pass to a wide open safety with no receivers in the area if that's what they thought the play was, right? Nonetheless, 11 for 23, 150 yards. You take out that third quarter where he, had that connection with Reese Vandersee. 5 for 17, 65 yards. That, if that's 75% of your game, that third quarter has to be a whole lot better than one TD. And we're getting to the point where there's 5 games left in the regular season with a 24-year-old QB. What patience should fans have for this? Because Iowa was not going to win that game the way that Cade McNamara was playing quarterback. And even on Iowa's second touchdown, the Brendan Sullivan touchdown in the red zone, in the goal line package. It's a bad snap that he makes an athletic play to, make sure that it stays in his hands, makes another athletic play to get to that outside, sort of a busted play bootleg. I don't know what else to call it than that. But, you think about that, and is there any chance Cade McNamara scores on that play? Not even bootlegging it. Does he create a touchdown in any way, shape, or form once you start him off with a bad snap, knowing the way that he was playing against that defense? Yeah. It strains credulity to say the answer is yes at this point. I want to be fair on this, but no, but I think the fairest thing you can say is Cade McNamara is not playing well enough to win Iowa games consistently, especially on the road. And for all of this offense is close. This offense is close.
It's been close.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say I would love to see them, maybe ask themselves on a Saturday for once, what if the thing that is missing from this offense is a quarterback with mobility, with the ability to erase some mistakes up front in front of him, with the ability to create more time for himself to a better extent than Cade does. Because we have seen better footwork from Cade in the pocket. We have seen him start to grow back into, having the footwork that typified his Michigan career. And that was good footwork. He's still not good enough. That Saturday night was not good enough. And I would go so far as to say it wasn't close.
No. I mean, Adam, as you know, up in the press box, it's kind of hard to tell based on angles and where things are at. On TV, it's much easier because you get the replay, you get all, and especially when you're in a press box where they don't have it, it's all TV's up back into the side over here, and you can't watch those replays. I knew Cade was bad, but like going back and watching some of the things on Twitter, like the highlights that folks would, lowlights that folks would put up, Um, it's just a conversation we're having every week, whether he plays well or not, that he misses at least like 2 or 3 throws that a 6th-year college football playoff quarterback should make. Just flat out. Just flat out. And I go ahead.
They're throws that you would expect Will Rogers to make, for
Yeah.
example.
Yep. Exactly.
They're throws that Michael Penix was making, and he was one of those transfer guys who just walked right in and set the world on fire. And yeah, that got him to the NFL. But that is what you want out of a 6th-year QB, is the ability to make those makeable throws.
And you're not expecting him to be as good as Michael Penix was, right? You're not.
No. But
No.
that's one.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's an example.
Yeah.
But I think Will Rogers is pertinent, right? Like there are so many transfer quarterbacks that have been there, done that. And like we gave Cade the benefit of the doubt through the first few games, more or less because, well, not the second game, more or less because of the fact that he is back after 2 years and in an ACL and all those things. And it's easier to give him that benefit of the doubt early on in the season. Now look where we're at.
Yeah.
Now look where Iowa's at. 4-3, 2 losses to teams that you're better than. I mean, Ohio State, that's just a whole different conversation. That's like playing a different sport. But this is a team loss, right? There's a reason we started talking about defense first, because the defense was bad. But you just can't have your 6th-year quarterback playing like this, missing throws, and be less athletic than the backup. Because Brendan Sullivan can come in and go 11 of 23 for a touchdown and a pick. But
Sure.
you have that added dimension. And this is what we've been talking about in the red zone or in that goal line package is, oh, he has that added dimension. Well, does he not have it for the other 80 yards in the middle of the field? Or what's going on there?
Yeah. You would think that QB mobility, that added dimension, might be even better when the defense is not crunched up within 15 yards, by necessity in that red zone. When they have to cover 40 yards and you're mobile like that, that is even more for a defense to have to account for. And yeah, we did give Cade the benefit of the doubt going into the season, but what we also said was there is an expiration date on this benefit of the doubt, on this leeway, on this patience for him to morph back into his Michigan form. And again, like Eliot, there's 5 games left in the regular season. Time is running out on his career, on Iowa's ability to really have, a special season, however you want to define that. Time's running out. The season is more than half over at this point. We're in the back end.
I'm probably going to write an article about this today, but I think time has run out for them to have a special season. Special season is college football playoff. Special season is making the Big Ten championship game, though I don't think any of us really expected them to make the Big Ten championship game, but had a solid shot to make the college football playoff. They went 11-1. And maybe that would have resulted in them making the Big Ten championship game. Who knows? But that's effectively it went from minimal shot, a small amount of hope to just dead in one game. You can't. What were our score predictions? Mine was 34-13. And I don't think I saw anybody drop a score prediction that was anywhere near what happened last night. At least not in the Iowa media.
No. I had 27-9.
You can't.
I was only off by 30 points on the margin.
You can't, if you want to be a college football playoff team, you can't show up and shit the bed like that.
Yeah.
And that's what they did.
Yeah. I mean, it looked like a half-ass effort.
Yep.
It really did. The missed tackles, the bad execution,
What?
just letting Michigan State fall forward on nearly every single play on top of that. That's how yards just keep adding up, and that's how you get outgained by nearly 200 yards. That's how Michigan State beats you in first downs 27-12. I mean, yeah, Iowa made some mistakes in the fourth quarter that could have put them in position to maybe steal this one, but they were never in position to earn a win
No,
last night.
no, no, no. You might have just said it and went over my head because I was going to make a point, but 32 points, 468 yards, and 39 minutes and 44 seconds time of possession for Michigan State to Iowa's 20 minutes and 16 seconds. You mentioned the falling forward, the lack of effort. That's indicative right there, if anything, the time of possession. And what do we talk about as an advantage for this Iowa team more often than not? Their experience. They've been there. They've done that. They don't look like it.
Yeah.
And effort like that, a game like that is much easier to write off when you've got a young team. When you've got a bunch of guys like, oh, they went on the road. Okay. Like expectations weren't high this season. They're young. They made mistakes. Okay. On to the next one. But in a season where college football playoff was the end goal, and you've got two linebackers who very well, we were expecting potential first team All-America for both Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson going into the season. Nick hasn't been as productive this year, but possibly leaving for the NFL for Xavier Wampa. Jamari's been good. Like, I don't want to say anything because all the off the passing and everything that went awry last night was the other side of the field from Jamari. Michigan State did that right. The other thing too, I think Michigan State's going to be really good soon. I think last night was an indication, and I want to give them credit because you come off just getting throttled by Ohio State and Oregon. Maybe you're starting to get some things right, but there's that talent discrepancy. Then you get into the bye week and you show up and you just hammer Iowa. I think that's a really solid indication of Jonathan Smith being a good coach. Like this program's in good hands.
I would agree with that. And I was especially impressed with how good Michigan State was on the line on both sides of the line. Their offensive linemen, I mean, yeah, on that last drive, they got away with a couple holds. They did, and that's how Michigan State got a touchdown and not a field goal out of that drive. We should mention that, but Michigan State's line was doing a fantastic job for the duration of the 60 minutes of getting to that second level of, disrupting what I was trying to do with its linebackers. And then on defense, how many times did Iowa try to get Kaleb Johnson loose only to have at least one Spartan in the backfield by the time Kaleb even gets the ball? And then the end result of that is you take out that 75-yard touchdown. He had 13 rushes for 23 yards, one first down on the ground. And he had a lot of opportunities for more than that. His one first down came on a 2nd and 1. And I guess they count the touchdown as a first down, but you get what I'm saying here. He was better, catching out of the backfield, and that needs to be more, if anything, it needs to be more of an element of this offense going forward because that gets him into space and it punishes defenses for just selling out on gap responsibility. But it can't be boom or bust for Kaleb Johnson. If that's how it's going to be, then it's sort of a retread of Tavian Banks in 97 once Iowa got to the Big Ten, and it was just, well, all right, it's either a touchdown or a loss of 3, and that's not how you sustain an offense. You have to be able to sustain drives, keep moving chains. Iowa did a good job of that in the first half of the season. We did not see it last night, and they got to figure out how to get that back. Again, like you said, some credit has to go to Michigan State for how they played against Iowa, how they prepared for Iowa. But Iowa's execution just has got to be better in every single phase of the game.
I think every defensive coordinator and their mother will look at how Michigan State played defense in this game against Iowa and something Kaleb said last night, I didn't hear him, but it was relayed to me by another media member, is those safeties playing low, right? Daring them to pass. And what happened? Cade goes 5 of 17 outside of the third quarter, right? That's really, and this isn't, I go back to praising Michigan State for what they did, Jonathan Smith being a good coach, but this team is not better than Iowa. Full stop.
Shouldn't be.
No.
Should not be. No.
But things they did effort wise, just better than Iowa last night. And things like that, where you bring the safeties up and you dare them to pass, put Michigan State in a situation to be successful defensively. You talked about those stats for Kaleb, 14 carries, 98 yards. Well, minus the 75-yard touchdown, I think it was 13 carries for 23 yards.
Yeah.
Brutal. And there were also moments, and there's been moments throughout the season where they put Jazz in as opposed to Kaleb Johnson, or maybe Kamari, but more often than not Jazz, where I'm sitting in the press box and saying, what are we doing? What is Iowa doing? What, like, you got the best running back in Power 4 college football, and they obviously there's a difference. You take him out after the 75-yard touchdown because he's probably gassed, and then you use Kamari in the 2-point conversion, but it's just odd to me. I continue to go back to like what was the Ohio State game of like, why did he only have 15 carries? This is your best offensive football player, your best offensive option. And I get it. Like sometimes things just aren't working like they were yesterday. But what's Iowa's offensive MO? Lean on them. Lean on them. Lean on them. And yet again, to counter my own point, they only had the ball for 20 minutes. How much can you lean on a defense when you only have the ball for 20 minutes?
Well, that what that really goes to show you is Iowa needs an effective, or just a passing game with a pulse, especially in that first half, because it was obvious that Michigan State decided we're going to stop Kaleb Johnson. That is our only goal. If Cade McNamara beats us, so be it. Cade McNamara did not beat Michigan State, and Iowa had 58 yards at the half. And what do you want, at that point? Because if Iowa cannot punish Michigan State for selling out so hard against the run, if Cade McNamara cannot just connect with his receivers in those scenarios where it is 9+ in the box, what's he doing out there? If you can't beat a 9-man box, if you can't throw over the top of that with any regularity, if that gets you 58 yards for a half, what is he adding?
And it's not against Michigan. It's not against,
no.
Well, Michigan's not a great example this year. Penn State, Oregon. I mean, he didn't do it against Ohio State. It's against Michigan State, who's loaded with a bunch of transfers, a first-year program under Jonathan Smith that has started the season 3-3 with 3 straight losses, and they got obliterated by Oregon and Ohio State. Like, I gave the credit where it's due to this team, but they're still not, they're just not as good as Iowa. Talent-wise, experience-wise, coaching, but just a rough game from top to bottom. And there's one thing I want to get to before we get out of here, because I got to check out of my hotel and get on a plane, guys. The 2-point conversion, going with Cade. Why? Like, was it just, that was confusing to me. That was clearly, I don't get it. It was clearly confusing. And Cade said he felt like he had somebody open and he just missed the throw, which that seems like a recurring theme. But especially after Brendan made that play with the errant snap, you show what he's capable of, and he can pass the ball, guys. Like, it doesn't have to be a flip. He doesn't have to hold it. He doesn't have to hand it off. He can throw the ball. We've seen him throw the ball. at
Yeah, he
Northwestern.
threw against Iowa.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not a wildcat formation. This is not junk offense. And if you watch that 2-point conversion, McNamara's footwork, it's like a deer that has just seen like a bunch of cheetahs. It's nervous, it's choppy, and then he just airmails the throw to either I believe it was either Lachey, and then Gill was at the second level at the back of the end zone. Either way, it was a bad pass to one of them. I'm not entirely sure which one he was throwing at, but he just sails it, and it was not catchable. It glanced off of I'm pretty sure it was Lachey's hands, but like that was a play you can't ask him to make, and that was just sort of the day in a nutshell. He was missing guys high, missing them low, missing behind him, missing in front of them. And we're not even talking about that interception because, there's a pretty decent chance that was on whatever receiver he thought he was throwing to. But regardless, either he doesn't know where his receivers are going to be at any, given moment, or he knows where the ball should be and his throws don't get there, that they're off by 3, 4, 5 yards. Either one of those is bad. Whichever one it is probably has a lot to do with the McNamara Sullivan conversation, right? Because if it's receivers running bad routes, changing the quarterback isn't going to help that. But I don't think it's just receivers running bad routes. I really don't, because he's throwing at guys that are open and missing them with regularity. And yeah, he has had better games this season, but when you can't point to any sort of like linear like trend of improvement, when this is what game 7 looks like from, again, your 6th-year senior, what is there to be optimistic about?
And a good game is 8 of 14. Like these are Deacon Hill numbers.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to end the podcast. We'll wrap it up here. We appreciate we appreciate you tuning into this episode of HawkCast, brought to you by Iowa.rivals.com, Hawkeye Beacon. If you're not a premium subscriber yet, we got all the intel. We're going to have intel post-game. We're going to have intel on recruiting this week. Another week of some big visits coming up. A 2025 target in this class will be on campus. So we'll keep you posted there. Men's basketball, of course, still ongoing with that 25 class. And of course, they're into the 26 class as well. We got intel there. We got some really good stuff for our premium subscribers on the board and in terms of articles and everything else. So head over there, iowa.rivals.com/subscribe. Join us. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe, drop a like, drop a comment. Let us know how you're feeling, what you're thinking going into this coming week. And don't forget to leave that rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and subscribe. You might be listening, but not subscribed. So make sure you do that and catch every episode. You have something to say there, Adam?
I was just going to say we can also mention the interview with Addie Deal, 5-star commit in women's basketball. A joy to talk to. I think Iowa fans are really, really going to enjoy cheering for her at Carver Hawkeye. But yet we published that on Friday night, the Friday night news dump, talking with a 5-star recruit. But yeah, that is there for our premium subscribers as well.
Cool. All right. I am Eliot Clough. He's Adam Jacoby. For now, we will see you next time.